impact of today's decision in the federal government, and once we have had an opportunity to evaluate all of the issues that may arise from that, then we may have another announcement later on. But I want to emphasize that it is our intention to go forward, to seek justice for the victims, for the families, and for all of El Paso. I'll be taking any questions you may have.
Does the federal case take precedent over the state's case? Can you clarify, like, what would happen, or in this case, what is if the state is still seeking the death penalty and now the government is not?
So it's not correct to say it takes precedence, but it is important to understand that the defendant is in federal custody. So the state is not able to prosecute the Walmart shooter until he gets out of federal custody and we're able to get him back into state custody. So until that happens, we're not able to go forward with our prosecution. So until the federal government is done with their case, we're able to get him out of federal custody into our custody. At that point, we'll be able to go on to trial and proceed with our case.
The death penalty cases are usually quite complex and lengthy, but also require resources. Are you looking into maybe requesting additional funding for the death penalty case?
The governor's office has provided us a grant which greatly offsets the expense to El Paso County and to our taxpayers for the expense in prosecuting this particular case. We have not utilized all of those resources. The governor's office has assured us that if additional resources are needed, that we can apply for additional funding.
We've gotten word that our state representative, Joe Moody, essentially submitted a letter to spare the killer's life. We're wondering if you could confirm with this and say what your feelings are on it.
I have seen that letter. Representative Moody's letter has no bearing or impact on this office. Has no bearing or impact on our decision. We're focused on the victims here in El Paso. We're focused on the citizens of El Paso County and making sure that justice is done here in El Paso for our community.
And have you been in contact with the previous DA, Jaime Espasa, by any chance? He is now the U.S. attorney. Have you heard from him, or have you had any conversations about this?
Very fortunately, I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Esparza, but none of them about this particular case.
My question has numerous ifs. If he is tried on the federal side and sentenced to 99 years life in prison, is there any guarantee that they will release custody to the state so you all can try him? Or is there any fear that he will start serving the next day after the sentence and therefore the state never gets a chance to prosecute him?
The problem with all of your ifs are that there are too many ifs, and I just don't know the answer to all of those ifs. Too many different directions. I'm afraid I really can't answer all of those different directions.
Is there any guarantee that they will release him after they're done with him?
I don't have the answer to that right now.
Thank you.
So is it, safe to say that this decision by the U.S. Attorney's Office will, obviously delay the state's case? There's still not any sort of trial frame date for the state.
I can't speak to the trial date. I don't know what the proceedings will go forward. That's going to be up to the judge and to the court system. Obviously, he's currently in custody in the federal system, so there are a lot of things that have to play out before we're prepared to go forward.
So you mentioned that the state of Texas will continue to evaluate the impact of today's decision and see if perhaps another statement is warranted in the future. Does that mean that if you assess and you find that it's perhaps not as impactful as you thought it may be, that you may revoke the death penalty filing? Is that a possibility?
I don't know what the different scenarios are that we could face in the future. We're just going to have to evaluate the scenario the situation as we go forward. I want to remind you all that we are still under the gag order. I can't go into too many details, regarding the potential scenarios that we face, in particular the factual scenarios that the case has, and also the various what-if situations that we have within the court system. And so all of those situations are controlled by the courts, and the gag order really prevents me from going into too many details there.
Actually, I have one more. I was in San Diego when this happened, but of course, this is a case that the whole world has been watching. It's something that happens in a community, people just going about their business, and something this devastating happens to them. But the impact is really global. Can you sort of speak to that and why, sort of tie it into why it's important, the way you see it, for this to be a death penalty case?
I would love to answer that question, but I think that if I get too far into that answer, I am going to breach that gag order because this case is very personal to this office, and it's very personal to the victims of this crime and to every heart of every person in El Paso. And I think that if I go too much into that, I'm going to be running afoul of our gag order, and I don't want to do that. I have too much respect for our court.
Final question. Did any of the victim families reach out to you today? And what did they say about it?
I'm very sensitive to the families of this case, and the communication that we have with the families, I'm not discussing that because I think that that's a very personal thing for those families, and I don't want to politicize the families, and so I've committed to them that the communication that we have with those families, we're keeping that confidential because I don't want to politicize that conversations.
Is there any other message that you have to send to El Paso community?
The only thing I can say with respect to that gag order is that we are moving forward, we are not stopping, and that this has been since the very beginning of my appointment is to get this case back on track. And we are doing that. We're in the process of getting this case back on track, and I look forward to our next court hearing and to being back in the 409th with the Honorable Judge Medrano. Okay. Thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate your time. We'll be talking to you again soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.